Good morning. I have been taking a break from video blogging. In fact, last week I took a break from blogging altogether. And this week was kind of tempted to do likewise, but I picked up the texts and I read them. And as I sat with them, I realized that the texts are not really about the texts, but they're really about the church and the seasons of church life. And I realized a little more about why I've been avoiding and what that's about for me. It's a little salty to read about church life when you're no longer enjoying church life. So there it is. Specifically the texts, though, and the stories and the seasons and the holidays to which they bear witness are not insignificant. The text specifically, or the season specifically that they're chosen to illumine, is All Saints' Day. And All Saints' Day is absolutely irrelevant outside of the church doors, right? Right. And inside the church doors, it was a little complicated for me in my early years in ministry because I'm not Catholic, and All Saints' Day is Catholic. It is essentially Roman Catholic. But when I moved to St. Louis some decades ago, I was acquainted with a holiday called Totenfest, Totenfest. And you won't find it in the dictionary, you won't find it on the UCC, United Church of Christ website, but it is part of the United Church of Christ, or UCC history, specifically the German evangelical wing. And so when I came to St. Louis, to this German enclave of the UCC, I was immersed in all things Evangelische, one of them being Totenfest. And what I learned is that Totenfest is essentially All Saints' Day, renamed and moved a month up in the church calendar. It actually has important history when, in the early 1800s, back in Prussia, Frederick Wilhelm, trying to unify the German Lutheran and Catholic communities, knew that if he created a liturgy, a book of worship, a religious experience that was shared, he could unify the people. And that was the Evangelische, or the evangelical tradition. Now, none of it worked very well for very long, I suppose. But in this book of worship, in this liturgy, is the word Totenfest and the renaming of All Saints' Day and the repositioning it. All of that is maybe insignificant, except, the role of religion in politics is significant. Also significant is that there was a felt need to reclaim this obscure holiday, All Saints' Day. Why was that so important? That it had to be not only saved, but renamed, moved, reclaimed. What is it about All Saints' Day that is so important to us? All Saints' Day, certainly Totenfest, are unknown in pop culture in America, but wildly popular is Halloween. And Halloween is, in fact, All Hallows' Eve. Hallows' Eve, Halloween. Halloween is the eve of All Saints' Day. So even if you have never heard of All Saints' Day, and clearly never heard of Totenfest, you know Halloween. And so you know the essence of All Saints' Day. All Saints' Day is that day that bears witness to the thin place between this world and the next. On Halloween, we laugh in the face of death as we don those spooky masks and go out at midnight. And it turns out that this commemoration transcends time and space and cultures. In other words, you find the roots of this Halloween, or All Saints' Day, or Totenfest in ancient traditions around the world. Specifically, All Saints' Day is rooted in a much more ancient holiday called Samhain, Samhain, from the Celts in the British Isles, and the marauding Christian colonizers borrowed from Samhain, but didn't want to, of course, call it Samhain. They had to Christianize it, so they called it All Saints' Day. But All Saints' Day is absolutely directly connected to Samhain. And around the globe, in Mexico, it's wildly popular today, a holiday called the Day of the Dead, which is rooted in an Aztec tradition, right? That was there long before the colonizers came to the area we now call Mexico. The Aztec tradition offered an annual communion with the ancestors. So if you pause the calendar to remember those who had gone before, it's an honoring of grief, right? It's a facing of our mortality. And it's also a time to commune with the ancestors, to be at one with the spirits that have gone before us. And as such, it is archetypal and important. As I notice myself withdrawing from the keyboard and from relationships and even the quickening of my breath, I recognize some common themes. The seasons are shifting. The earth itself is shifting. The plants are literally dying. This is that season when all the world around me and the world within me is touching that thin place, that place between this world and the next, that facing of mortality, that recognition of ultimate mystery. Without benefit of church, without benefit of liturgy to write about these emotions and this spiritual yearning, this spiritual angst, what ritual do we have? What ritual do we need? I began to write that I'm at a loss, without benefit of church, for how to commemorate or how to tend this spiritual angst without benefit of church. But I realized, as I started to write that with more clarity in my intention, I am actually engaging in my own ritual celebration of this time. For the first time in a long time, I actually pulled out that box in the basement I have of spooky Halloween decor that is absolutely kitsch. Skeletons and pumpkins and mummies. And I spent my time last week putting up a faux mantle above the wood stove so I could arrange some of these holiday decor. And I realized that without benefit of church, what we have culturally as we become increasingly unchurched is we have Halloween with all of its, commercialized, but nonetheless important opportunity to address this angst. I laugh about the chocolate and the pumpkin spice, but really what we're talking about is a moment of decadence, a moment of throwing caution to the wind, a moment of putting odd things together like pumpkin and coffee, right? Eating chocolate when we know we're not going to fit into our blue jeans when we eat so much chocolate, right? Laughing in the face of our own futile mortality for just a moment. Outside of church, without benefit of cleric, we actually do have the rituals that speak to the longings of our heart. So it is, dear friends, on this other side, this bright side, this sunlit side of the church door, that I bid you all a happy Halloween.